Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Jenny Aiello, and this is With Love, Jenny, a podcast where we meet ourselves right in the heart of our vulnerability and authenticity. In this sacred space where it's just you and I dive into real life, rich with wisdom and opportunities for deep healing. I explore what it means to truly connect to ourselves, to each other, and to something much greater than us all. In each podcast, I like to meet life right where it touches us most, in our tenderness, in our truth, in our struggles and our strength. So wherever you are on your journey, or whatever it is that you're carrying, no matter how light or heavy, just know I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of With Love, Jenny. Today, my co-host Kristen and I are discussing what it takes to surrender, to let go of our ego and allow for other possibilities to emerge, to quit being right and learn how to let go of an outcome. So what's supposed to happen has room to emerge. There are so many directions this can go in today. I have so many different stories of surrender I could share, and Kristen too. So we're just going to surrender to the conversations today and see where this goes. But in the end, I'm going to share 5 steps that you can practice that will help you learn to surrender to. And most of all, we want you to hear why it's good to know when it's time to surrender. Because sometimes it doesn't feel like we should when actually it's the best outcome. So we're going to dive in to a pretty interesting conversation and share some pretty fun stories with you. I think it's human nature. When we get things in our head, it kind of clicks in about what is supposed to happen. And when that happens, it's hard to, we sink our teeth into it and we get programmed to follow what our mind is telling us should happen. In other words, we get attached to what it's supposed to look like. And if anything causes it to look different or veer off course, then we automatically think something is going wrong, when actually things might be falling into place. This can be in the smallest of situations and in big life-changing events. And this is why this topic is so important, and we wanted to bring it to you all. I get really upset or really anxious when something doesn't play out the way I expect or want it to. I am a control freak, so I spend enormous amounts of time in the big picture all the way down to the most minute detail. And I want to make sure that everything goes according to plan. If you talk to any of the people who assist me or work with me at my retreats, they would be nodding really big right now. And I get rewarded because those details make everything run smoothly. But what can happen is when something else that I don't know about needs to happen, if I'm so wedded to the way it's going that I don't allow for that, I do not leave room for anything else to even emerge. I block sometimes. I block out miracles. I block out magic. I block out these amazing things that can unfold. So I'm going to tell a story about what that can look like. Okay, this is just a very tangible example of the concept of what it means to surrender or not surrender. And this was a story that happened not long ago. My husband and I were headed out to a location about 20 miles outside of our town. We had to get on the interstate. We had never been there. So Bob plugged in his GPS, which even if we had been there, he would do. He always puts an address in his GPS before we leave the driveway. But he wanted to know what was the quickest and easiest route so we wouldn't be late. And as we began driving, of course, I'm talking and he's listening and we're engaged in a pretty good conversation. But as we were flying down the interstate, I noticed that he wasn't paying attention to the GPS. He was in the wrong lane. And I knew the exit we needed to get off on. And he was still just talking and we were in our conversation, but he wasn't getting over. And there was enough traffic that it was going to take a bit to move through two lanes, right? So I began getting anxious because he wasn't getting over. So I said something. I said, you need to get over. That's our exit coming up. To which he said, no, it isn't. So now I'm like, well, I pointed to the map and I said, well, yeah, I believe it is. And he insisted, no, it isn't. And I was like, no, look, it says right here, take this exit. That sign says exit 15, like we need to get over. And as we passed our exit and the GPS began to say recalculating, he said, oh, I guess it was. And I was perplexed. I was like, why would someone purposefully just tell both a GPS and the passenger who were saying the same thing that, no, you're wrong, I'm right, over something that it wouldn't have mattered if we got over and didn't go, if it was an absolute, no, it isn't. No, that's not our exit. He was very hardcore and clear about it. And so he followed what he thought should happen rather than allowing what needed to happen. And that's the part of this story I want you to hold on to, because this is the example of what not surrendering looks like. This is when we don't yield to our guidance, when powers that be, whether it be God or angels or spirit guides or other people in our life who have information that we don't have, then when we're busy in our ego being right, we miss so much. We miss way more than an exit ramp. We miss some really big life lessons, really big guidance, really big course corrections, because we think we know the way and it's better to do it our way. And that's really human nature as pertains to that living with a strong ego. So I asked my husband, what was that? What was going on with you that you were actually defiant about that guidance? And he explained that when he plugged it in, he believed that the GPS would know the way he would want to go and that it would follow what path he thought we should take, what route we should take. And the exit would be way further down the road than where it actually was. And so when it didn't match, he yielded to his ego without giving any possibility to another outcome. So he is very attached to the outcome of it's further down the road than what was happening in real time. I think this story or this situation happens to us a lot more than we realize. After that, I began to notice, what's my version? That's one of the questions I ask myself all the time. What's my version of this? In what ways am I a control freak, or am I being right, or am I attached to what it's supposed to look like that I whiz right past all the possibilities? We as humans think we know where we need to go. We think we know what's best. We think we're right a lot of times. And so we resist that feedback. We resist allowing what needs to happen for us instead of to us. And I got to say, as a recovering control addict, this is extremely frustrating for me at times. So what do you do when something you want just doesn't flow? What do you do when you're meeting every kind of possible resistance? Even for me in the car, I wanted him to steer off the exit. I kept even leaning toward it. I kept hoping that if I leaned toward my door, he would go toward the exit. And it was so much in me getting frustrated over that situation. So I want to just stop and get Kristen's thoughts about this. And then we're going to go into the art of surrendering and what goes into the steps to get us, either one of us, to just let go. I had to surrender to the fact that we might now be late because it was 2 miles till the next exit where we were going to have to turn around. And there was a lot of letting go in our car, letting go of being right and letting go of needing it to look a certain way. And where my thoughts go after the fact. And so we're going to kind of dive into all the little components of this story because it's full of them. And then I have another really funny story to share with you. But Kristen, chime in and tell us about your relationship to surrender and maybe some of your resistance to it.
Well, if you've listened to previous episodes, you may know that that is my word this year. It's something that I really, truly need to work on. I am also a control freak for the simple fact to keep my environment safe. And it's something that I've held on to since I was little. And I have realized this year that I don't need that anymore. And I don't need to function that way anymore. It's almost like I've been on this battlefield for so long and I'm using these tools that are so rusty and broken. And I'm coming to realize that if I can surrender to a situation, it might turn out better than I could ever think it would be. And now as an adult in situations that I can not control, but like I'm not a kid anymore where I'm in these situations that I can't get out of. So it's empowering the thought of surrender, but it's also a habit not to surrender.
Yes.
It's challenging. I had to watch my dad go through an open heart surgery where there's nothing any of us could do. It was all up to how life was going to take its course, and we had to surrender. I had a brain bleed. I had to surrender to it. I could not step out of it. But in situations of day-to-day life where you can choose not to surrender, I think that's what we're getting at, because there's always those not forceful, but like moments where you have to surrender. But how can you use it as a tool to see, like Jenny said, like what possibilities are there out there? Like instead of being so narrow-minded and wanting to control the situation and not seeing I don't know why the word magic keeps coming to me, but like the God moments.
Right. Well, I think control is a big, what is it? It's the enemy of surrender, right? It's like you can't surrender and control. But one of the things you said, you sort of slipped, but it was like a Freudian slip in a way. It's like, oh, but I can use surrender as a way to control, not just the outcome, but more my ego. Like it's an override my ego. And when I thought about it that way, even though it may not be clean in the full spectrum of what it means to surrender, it gave me a stepping stone to go, okay, I'm going to use that as a tool to let me be in control of whether I surrender or not. I'm going to surrender as a way of seeing what happens, of getting out of the way. But I kind of still used it as a control mechanism because I'm so good at control. But regardless, there's two different words. And I know, Kristen, that we've talked about one of these, I think on the last episode, where we get stuck in the semantics. So one of those words is acceptance. And, how do I accept something? That means I'm just letting somebody get by with something. If I accept their behavior or I accept, that whatever it is that's unacceptable to me. And we talked about how acceptance on a higher level is allowing it to be what it is and guiding it to something else versus tolerance. So acceptance doesn't mean tolerate. On the same note, surrender isn't giving up. And some people think if I surrender, I'm giving up. In a way, yes, it is giving up, but what are you giving up? And it's giving up the resistance. Surrender's the opposite, is to resist. It's to push back. It's to fight, right? And I actually kind of go into controversial waters here because so many things that we are exposed to in life where our language, which to me words are powerful, and our language around things that we don't want is resistance. For example, we fight against drug use. We create campaigns that we fight against injustice. We fight. That's what we're kind of wired to fight for something or fight against something. And in that language, it's hard because that brings a natural resistance. It brings a sense of adrenaline to the table. Like, I have to go to battle. You had said that to keep your environment safe, like to be safe in your environment, Kristen, you were it was like, I have to be prepared for battle every day. That's very hard on the human body and our nervous system, and it takes its toll over time when we live in a fight or a flight. And that's what not surrendering is. It means we store that tension, that anxiousness, my anxiousness in the car, because it wasn't going the way I needed it to go, or that he was going to dart in front of someone at the last minute and cause an accident. I didn't know what was going to happen. That isn't good for us. And surrendering to, well, if we're late, we're late. If we have to drive a different way, we have to drive a different way. Maybe that actually was happening for us, because had we gone that way, we would have been encountered with another delay or an accident. And this was the guidance. Bob's ego was the way that the universe used to keep us safe. Who knows what all the scenarios were? I had to surrender to, okay, the outcome was we missed our exit. We're going to go another way. I could have gotten really mad at him. I could have gotten into a big argument about, you never listen. I mean, we could have gone there into a big, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you why do you even use a GPS? That would be my tendency. But I had to stop and take a deep breath and go, you know what? Maybe something good is from this that I don't see. So for me on that side, I also had to surrender to the outcome, to what is, align with what is happening, not resist it, because the resistance is where we cause our own suffering. And so there's wars that groups of people lead the resistance. That's what it's called, the resistance. And it prepares you for battle, and battle is not good for our nervous system. Sometimes in life, short term, it can serve its purpose. But to me, it's far better to go through whatever is happening with the least amount of resistance, because that brings the least amount of suffering. So I'm very curious now that I've said all that, Kristen, what are your thoughts when it comes to that?
My brain is going in a million different directions.
I can tell.
I feel like for me, it's a habit to suit up in my armor and get ready to go to battle. Like, for example, I had a circumstance yesterday. I literally said to my friend, I feel like I'm preparing to go to battle. And it was a soccer game where somebody was going to be there.
Yeah.
And I have to prepare myself every time I'm around this person. And it's like, I don't know how to surrender in that moment because I am on guard. I cannot relax around this person.
Wow.
I know that because that's my word this year, I'm being put in these situations
right,
to learn the lesson, but I don't know how to surrender without putting a wall up.
Right. Which isn't surrendering.
And I keep hearing in my head, you told me there would be a good moment to tell the chapel story. And I feel like this might be a good moment.
Okay. Yes, please do.
Okay. So I know I've referenced my dad's health a couple times. My dad had his second open heart surgery, and it was very traumatizing for us all to go through it. And we didn't know what was going to happen. And he made it through. And the next day I was still like recovering from what we had all gone through as a family. And I called Jenny, and I just was on the phone with her, absolutely bawling my eyes out for I don't even know how long. And I was sitting in an area where I was kind of in a cubby, but definitely the whole room had to have heard what was going on. And Jenny kept saying to me, and at this point, I was very resistant to anything God. And she's like, well, I wonder if the hospital has a chapel. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Are you kidding me? That's not who Kristen is. Kristen doesn't believe in that stuff. And it was almost like a higher power. I hadn't surrendered, but a higher power was guiding me to surrendering. And once we got off the phone, I had to go to the bathroom so bad. And there was a bathroom in the room where all these people had to have heard the conversation. I'm like, well, I can't go that way. I'm just going to walk the other way, and I will eventually find a bathroom. And I did. And it was literally the door next to the chapel. And at that moment, I'm like, okay, I hear you. I'm going to go in. I didn't want to go in. I really fought it. But something in me was like guiding me, like, you have to go in there. And I went in there, and it was everything I needed to take in what had just happened, and to just sit there in silence and feel like I was in such a place that was supporting me. But if I would have resisted that, and if I would not have surrendered to that moment, I don't think I really would have truly processed what had happened. And maybe it would have gotten stored in my body, as we talked
Yeah.
about trauma. It was a very traumatizing situation.
Yeah.
And I did something that was so opposite of me, but it ended up being the best thing for me. And I knew enough from working from Jenny that this is a sign you are going in there.
Well, it was a pretty big invitation. Like, we're not going away. Here it is, the big door with chapel on it. So
Right.
I remember how resistant you were, but I do think that we have to know, what are we surrendering to, right? Like,
Right.
if we let go of our ego mind and what we know, and surrender, what are we surrendering to? And to me, it's always God or a higher power, or a trusting that there's more to life than just a bunch of humans running the show, right? We see how good that's working. But I think that for me, when I get to that moment of just trust me, it's like this voice coming from nowhere saying, trust me, there's another way. That's that guidance, that nudge, that ability to say, let me let go of what I thought should happen and trust that something else is happening around me that I can't see, feel, touch, but it's there and it's showing up. Right. So we've got several of these stories of surrender that are just so powerful. I want to share one last one, and then we'll talk even more about how they all three connect, because you'll start to see the common thread between ego versus surrender through all our stories. That story, Kristen, going through that with you, when you were with your dad and so scared and so just sad that he was suffering, sad, not knowing, completely loss of control of an outcome. You had no control over what was happening, which is that invitation to say, let me surrender to that higher power, right? It's the only way to go if you're going to surrender. Otherwise, you just resist the whole time. And it's so much harder that way. And your dad had a positive outcome as a result, but you going in that chapel door brought peace to you. It brought a sense of comfort to you that you didn't know you needed. The energy that was inside the chapel gave you something that you maybe didn't know what it was or why it was there, but your resistance went away after you walked in the door. Like, okay. And sometimes it takes that level of desperation to go past what everything you say you don't want and go into what you think you might need and find out what surrender has on the other side of it. Because to me, I think a song is coming in my head, Sweet, Sweet Surrender. It is. There's something so beautiful on the other side of surrender. Surrendering to what is going to happen or what needs to happen versus what you want to happen or what you think is right. So my first and most profound experience, I would say, of what surrender looked like was during a whitewater rafting trip. I grew up in southern West Virginia, and one of the favorite outdoor activities there is going whitewater rafting down the New River. And in its high season where the river's running fast, it's a pretty exciting adventure. I had a bunch of extended family and friends that had gathered together, and we were all planning to spend an entire day on the river. And without going into the entire backstory, I just want to say that I had decided at the last minute that I couldn't go because I was leaving my kids with a babysitter and there was a lot of stuff going on and I just didn't feel comfortable. So I had said, I'm going to stay back. And my family was insisting that I go, literally pushed me into the car against my will, just sort of like, so now I'm on my way. And then they take you by bus to the river and you get your helmet and your life vest and everything. And then they put you on a bus. And the whole time I kept trying to figure out how to leave. I wasn't planning to actually spend the day on the river that day. I was stuck in, no, I have to get back home because I just feel too guilty leaving my kids with this friend. And on the bus ride, they gave us instructions of what to do should you fall out of your raft. I didn't bother listening because I had no intention of actually getting in the raft, right? But it turned out that despite what I wanted, the bus didn't go back to the base camp where I would have gotten in the car and driven home. They parked. It didn't go back. And so I could either sit on the bus all day or I could go on the river. And so I had to surrender. That was my first part. I had to surrender and say, okay, even though I wanted to go home, I'm supposed to go on this river. So I did that. We had a first half of the day, we stopped. They have a big picnic lunch, halfway down the river. The second half of that full day ride are the Class 5 rapids. It's pretty adventurous. And the very first one they name Surprise because it's a huge boulder that pushes the raft straight up toward the sky, then straight down into the water, only to hit a second boulder that shoots you way back up to the sky and then pushes you back down toward the water. So it's a pretty long Class 5 rapid. And at the beginning, I'm in the back of the raft and the person sitting on the inflated part of the raft, the bench, my feet were secured by their weight. But when it shot up in the air, we all came up off our seat, which I lost my anchor because he wasn't anchoring my feet to the raft. And I did a backward cartwheel straight into the Class 5 rapid, right over the raft. Into the water I went. The water, it's a Class 5, tumultuous rapid. I was surrounded by, covered in millions of tiny bubbles. It shot me up. It sucked me down under. My human instinct, the survival instinct, is to fight. It's, oh my gosh, I have to fight to hold on to something. I'm literally underwater with my arms flailing everywhere, trying to find something to hold on to. In the moment, it didn't even make sense to think that I could hold on to something because the water was going so fast. But I was in an instinctive survival mode of fight my way through that. What I realized is in my head, there was, oh my gosh, I should have listened to the instructions. I don't know what to do right now, right? And I asked, what do I do? And all I heard down way under the water that had sucked me down, I'm deep in this rapid water, and I heard surrender. And so I put my hands, I quit running them through the water. I just held on to my life vest and I laid back into the water and it bobbed me up and down. When it pushed me up, I took a breath. When it sucked me under, I held my breath, but I quit fighting. I just turned limp. My body went limp. And I noticed that I wasn't banging into rocks anymore. I wasn't getting battered and bruised and tossed about. The water was just carrying me in the best way possible through that rapid. And before long, I was just floating. And I opened my eyes and saw the sunlight. And I heard the people in the raft telling me to swim to the raft. And they were on the other side of the river. But I was in such a state of peace at the end. When I first opened my eyes, I was just floating and feeling the water saying, I've got you. I've got you. Just let me support you. And that's what surrender, literally, I had to go through that crazy experience to feel the difference between fighting, resisting, and surrendering. and allowing the flow of life or the flow of this river to get me where I need to be. So it's not natural to relax at a time like that. But that's what I did. I relaxed my body. I relaxed my will, my strong will. I relaxed my nervous system and I let go. I let go of the fight so that I could live. And if I didn't, at least I went more peacefully than I would have if I had been just, I mean, I don't know what I looked like underwater at the beginning of that, but it was not pretty. I will tell you that. But I learned so much from that experience and how resistance really does cause much of our suffering. It's applying that afterward to what else do I fight to survive, fight to do it my way, fight to be right about something I want to be right about, rather than surrendering to other possibilities. And again, on the other side of it, there's so much peace. There's so much tranquility and serenity there. So, Kristen, now that I've shared that story, chime in. I'm eager to hear your observations.
Well, I wonder too, like when you surrender, there's so much, when you keep saying possibility, I keep thinking of the word space. Like there's so much more space. Like you're not enclosed in this tight room. It's more open to things beyond you. But I also keep thinking, like, for people that have gone through traumatizing childhoods, like the words surrender, like you really have to get to a place in your inner world where you feel safe enough to surrender, because that can feel very scary when you've been protecting yourself for so long. It's like, surrender? What do you, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, it's very
this.
Right. It's very scary. And again, going back to your story, it's what am I surrendering to? And if you don't have, which I think that's what opened up your spiritual journey.
Oh, for sure.
When you walked into, when you were willing, you gave up your will and were willing to surrender to another possibility, which was maybe there's something in the chapel for me. And you were just desperate enough to step into that space, right? And it is a bigger space than in that tight world of your panic over your dad's situation. In my tight world of panic over, I'm like going to die in this class 5 rapid. It's that opening up to there's another possibility, even within that space inside, that when we step into that space of surrender, we find ourselves literally in a new experience of it. And it isn't instinctive. Your instinct is going to be always to survive and protect yourself and build your walls and prepare for battle. That's what we've taught ourselves. But there is another way. And sometimes that surrender is going to yield a greater result. It doesn't mean, I got interrupted in a thought just now, because it doesn't mean if you're in danger that you just let whatever is supposed to happen in dangerous situations, that you're not supposed to protect yourself. I hope that our listeners know that's not what we mean. If you feel yourself in danger, do what you need to do to get to safety always. This is more in moments of a soccer game
or inner world conflict.
Exactly. And going to a soccer game. So I want to go back to that example, because you are putting yourself through a lot of anxiety and bad feelings, anticipating something that hasn't happened yet, in the prospect of being in the presence of someone who you don't feel good about or safe with, right? But if you remember, you're not a child. If you remember, I don't have to be afraid. There isn't anything that's going to happen to me physically or emotionally at this soccer game that I can't leave and get away from,
right.
And so, but that is still not really accepting. That's coping. That's a management of it. The acceptance or the surrender is looking for other possibilities, allowing for other possibilities. Can I surrender my story of how it's going to be to allow the possibility that it could actually be okay? And this is segueing back to what we talked about in the word acceptance. If I just let this person be who they are and know it has nothing to do with me or that I need to be different, if I remember that I can just allow this person to be who they are, do what they do, say what they say, knowing I don't have to let that in. I don't have to make it about me. I can just let them be them, and I can be over here and be me, and I don't have to change.
Well, and I've been realizing I'm such in my own way around this person that all I could see is me being the victim. And I have now seen outside of that story, and I look at this person very differently. And but I haven't had too many encounters with them. So it's like very new. So
Yes.
I'm looking at them and I just kind of have compassion for them because now I see, oh, I think they're acting that way because they have really bad anxiety. I think they're acting that way because they're protecting themselves because they had a crappy childhood and this is how they know how to act in the world. Now
Right.
I don't want to say I feel bad for them, but it's like.
Well, you have empathy because you know what
Empathy.
that feels like. You know what that
Yeah.
feels like. And that takes us into a whole nother podcast about mirrors.
Well, and I keep thinking too, as we're talking, like surrender is a muscle because the more
Yes.
that I do it, the more that I realize it's going to be okay. The more that I do it, oh my God, look, that happened. That would have never happened if I didn't surrender.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it is a muscle. It is a muscle that we didn't really learn to do as children. I don't think. I mean, if you did, that you were advanced. You came here to learn bigger things. But I think that we experience things, but that train us how to do the fight or flight and how to respond with our way of coping, which creates that anxiety and that resistance to what is. And, my mentor, my coach told me, I remember battling with my own ego and my own need to control things and my need to be right about things for so long. And I felt like every time I was learning something from her, it boiled down to my ego was in the way. I was in my own way again. And I remember just getting so frustrated. And I'm like, I just hate egos. I just don't like them at all. Mine is nothing but a troublemaker. And she's like, no. Our ego is our human brain. Like we need that. We need to have it. The problem is an exchange of power. If you put your ego in the driver's seat and let it have its way through life, that's what it's like. It's like being at the back of a bus with a crazy person driving the bus who has no idea how to drive. It's not prepared. It doesn't have the wisdom and the connection to other resources to make those wise decisions. The ego is our doing mind. It's our doer. And if we don't give it something to do, it takes over. It takes over and it does what it knows, which is all based on past. Our memory teaches our ego how to behave. It's our past experiences that are developing the ego mind. Whereas what we're talking about is more our spiritual mind, our spiritual guidance, our intuition, our instinct, our sixth sense about things. It's like paying attention to that. And you do have to learn to trust that. And she said, our ego is not a bad thing if you give it something to do, but you stay in the driver's seat of your life. You still get to say, I know the GPS says this way, but I'm going to go that way. Maybe Bob had an instinct not to go that way. Who knows? We could go down that scenario. There's all kinds of possibilities besides somebody that was just in his head and being right. There could be all kinds of things going on. But for the examples that you gave of the soccer game, or your ego could have said, don't go in the chapel. The chapel's bad. Those people try to brainwash you. You know how you feel about religion. Remember, remember, remember. You could have listened to that, but you didn't. You said there was another voice saying, nudging you there. There was another reason why I brought it up. And then it was right there where you had to go to the bathroom. It's like come out of the bathroom and there's the invitation again. It's like, can't ignore it, right? The signs that you saw, and to trust that, to trust and say, thanks for sharing. And that's what my coach told me. She's like, Jenny, when you get that, don't go there, danger, you know what always happens, you never do these things. Those voices from your ego saying don't is simply based on his history and what you've learned so far in life. But when there's another possibility that presents itself, just say, I hear you. Thanks for sharing. I think we're going to give this a try, and I think we're going to be okay. And if not, I'll call upon you and your vast experience in these situations to get me out of a bad situation. But the ego wants to offer that. But remember, your ego is nothing but a bunch of past experiences. It has nothing to do with future possibilities. It has nothing to do with anything other than what it has learned so far based on how you have framed, or it has framed, all those life experiences. And your ego could say, we have nothing but victim experiences. So all that's familiar is victim. And you could say, going in there is going to make me a victim of that. Being at the soccer game, I'll be a victim of that. So separating that ego and saying, thank you for sharing, but you're the backseat passenger here. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to actually look at this person with empathy and understanding. I'm actually going to go in this new space and see what it feels like and if it supports me today. I'm actually going to listen when someone's saying, hey, I think you need to get over a few lanes. There's guides around us. There's people, entities of higher powers. We are getting signs and things from all kinds of different space. And we have to be willing to say, there's more than me that controls what's happening. I ultimately get to make that decision. But even within us, there's the human ego mind, and there is the spiritual being that comes with wisdom.
I feel like, too, I keep thinking, if we were talking about surrender, you and I, 3 or 4 years ago, it would probably have been really triggering to me. So, and it may be to some listeners, I guess I just feel like do you think, my question to you, Jenny, is do you think you have to do deep healing work before you can try the surrender out? Try it out.
I don't think it's necessary to go deep. I think the surrendering might bring stuff up for you that you're going to want to go deep into some healing work around, depending on your story. But I think this is a great place for people who haven't done any work to begin and say, I want to kind of explore, what is it that my ego or my strong will wants to do, or how do I use control, or do I surrender control? There's people that probably over surrender, but through an ego process, meaning people pleasers. The people pleaser in me surrenders to what I want all the time. Like, where would you like to go to dinner? My husband's a great people pleaser example. I'll say, let's go to dinner. And then you pick, he'll go, I'll just eat whatever you want, or I'll watch whatever movie you want, or I'll do whatever you want. That's not really surrender. Although it works beautifully for somebody who likes someone to do it my way. It's more acquiesce to avoid the battle. It's real important that you stay connected to what is it that you truly want? What's my truth right now, right? Like, what is it that I want? What's the truth about this situation? And use your voice. But if you enter into power struggles, sometimes you do just say, I think I'm just going to go the easy button right now. I'm just going to push that easy button, and I don't want the battle. And I don't know if it's age, if we get to a certain point in life, or if it's how long we've battled that makes this timeline happen. But you do get to a point where you're just too tired. And the things that I used to get all riled up about, I look at now and I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. That's not even my battle. That's
Right.
not even mine to carry. Why do I care so much? And that's the question. Why am I so invested in being right? Or why am I invested in forcing this to be the way that I want it to be? There's a really good book. I think I've referenced it before. It was one of those life-changing books. And to be honest, I've not read it from cover to cover yet, but I got the gist of it, by David Hawkins. It's Power versus Force. And to me, it is what explains this art of surrender. It's
Yeah.
why we surrender, right? Because are we forcing something to happen through our own will, or are we stepping into our power and allowing what needs to happen to emerge? And that's what the difference of those two energies feels tangibly different to me when I'm forcing a square peg into a round hole and I'm expending enormous energy hammering that square peg, and it won't go in the round hole. No matter how hard I hammer it, it's not going to fit. And I expend all this energy trying and trying and trying to make that work instead of going, I don't think it's going to work. And then looking and saying, oh, the shape doesn't match, and make adjustments and stepping into my power. Giving up would throw the hammer and the peg down and say it's never going to work. But looking for another solution is the surrender. There's another way besides the one you have. I had another way of going through a class 5 rapid than fighting and kicking and flailing. The other way was to hold on and relax, which was counterintuitive to my survival instincts, but it saved my life probably because my head was banging. It was rough until I surrendered. I still brushed by things, but the water buffered it all. It took care of me. So that surrender is looking for the other way. What's another way that we can do this? What's another way to have this conversation? What's another way to think about a chapel and what it means? What's another way to be able to enjoy the soccer game? What's another way to spend my afternoon? What's another way to communicate this? Whatever is your situation, look for the other way is part of that surrendering to get out of that ego mind that wants so bad to be right. So I mentioned at the beginning 5 steps, and these are things that I broke down and I use, but they may not all work for you, but I just want to give them to you as something to think about. For me, the very first step of surrendering is first accept what is. Accept the situation for what it is. The situation is there's someone at the soccer game who triggers me. The situation is I need something more than what I have of my own resource right now because I don't know if my dad is going to die today. And I have to accept that I'm not enough right now. And that's the truth. Right now, my resources aren't enough for me right now. That's acceptance. I had to accept that there was no way we were going to be able to hit the exit ramp the way we needed to. The acceptance was I'm not able to hold on to a rock that's slippery with water going 80 miles an hour. Like I had to accept that there was no holding on to anything in that situation of the class 5 rapid. So the first is accept what is. What is the current of life wanting to see happen, and how am I getting in the way of that?
It's a big one.
Yeah, it's the first step for a big reason. So,
How am I getting
yeah,
in the way of that? And that's really hard to humble yourself.
it is humbling
Mhm.
because humbling is saying the ego isn't right. That's what
Right.
humbleness is. The ego doesn't know everything. The ego can't solve the world's problems. It's humbling, and life will humble us to remind us that there's another way.
So either you choose to work on humbling yourself or you're going to get smacked in the face.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes. I've got stories about that too. So
Yes.
the second step is ask the situation what it's trying to teach you. I always start, that's the example of giving my ego something to do, it's like, okay, let's look for what is it teaching us? What is it that I'm supposed to learn from this? And when I do that, I step out of the frustration long enough to actually learn something. If I'm stuck in being right and I don't look for what could go right or what is it teaching me, then I am stuck. And the sooner that I look for the lesson, it's sort of the doorway into surrender for me. Like, what is this teaching me? And the sooner I can learn that, the better the flow of life. I don't have to keep learning that lesson. And to your point, Kristen, just like in the universe will humble you, it will keep teaching you. Right. If there's something that you're supposed to be learning that your soul came here to learn and your ego is preventing that, the lesson gets louder and bigger till it becomes sometimes a 2x4 that whacks you upside the head. And you're like, what the heck? And it's like, oh, I think I wasn't really paying attention in all the other invitations to learn that. The third step is really often very, very difficult, but huge. And that's to have gratitude for the situation you're in. I just think that when we learn to love what is, accept and love what is, and give thanks for it, it shifts the energy so fast. Giving thanks for creating a different outcome to either humble me or to remind me that, hey, there's other possibilities here. Don't get on a one-track mindset. Look for the window that's open instead of the door that's closed. So allowing what might be the thing that's supposed to happen instead of what you want to happen or not happen can be serving a higher good. And I think that becomes a part of what I would ask our listeners to think about is, what do you believe around that? Whatever you believe, if you don't really have a higher power or anything that's related to how you were created and why you're here, if you're just it and then you die, this concept won't make sense, I don't think. But appreciating that in my human short-sightedness, this looks horrible. But in God's eyes, this is all part of a plan that's unfolding that is a course correction for all who are involved. And it's going to serve a higher good that you can't see right now. And so for me, when I don't see anything to be grateful for in that situation, when I can't find anything to say, oh, I'm so grateful, give thanks that there might be a bigger plan unfolding. And I sometimes will say, I don't see it right now, but all this means is something better is coming my way. And I just have to wait. But gratitude opens the doorway of that as well. It softens that energy a little bit whenever it looks bleak. The fourth step is the part we've been talking about the last hour, and that is to surrender. It's to relax your body. It's to let go. It's to say, I actually can't control this. I don't need to control this. I'm going to trust that it'll work out. And I put that intention or prayer around it. I'm just going to trust that if I let go, then whatever is meant to be will be. If I don't do that, then I am going to have a pretty good chance of spiraling down into a helpless victim status, which you talked about, Kristen. It's like, we can just be victims of bad things happening to us, or we can learn from it and be grateful for it and rise up out of it knowing, no, that happened for us, not to us.
Yeah. When you can take your victim blinders off and realize that you had the power all along to take them off, it's mind blowing.
Right? It's like, oh, I could actually step up and pull those blinders off. I can actually find my way to a new way that doesn't leave me victimized. And that's powerful.
It's so powerful when you don't know that the blinders can be removed.
Right. You thought that we all had them and that was part of just like our ears, it's like,
right.
Oh, wait, what? There's like some other option here, and surrendering to it is beautiful, empowering. It's very empowering when you see, and it's a muscle, like you said, to your point, you've got to exercise this muscle, but when it gets strong and you're standing solid in the power of surrender, it's it is very liberating, invigorating, and empowering all at the same time.
Well, I think it goes back to self-worth too, like in your self-esteem. Like if you don't have that, where do you start?
Right.
You got to build a muscle.
Right. Exactly. You've got to learn a lot about yourself to be able to exercise the muscle. We don't even know we have the muscle. And so we don't know we have the blinders, and we don't know we have a muscle that can take them off. So all these resources are what lead to actually take a deep breath and let go and let everything fall into place, and trust the fact that maybe it's not really falling apart. And to me, that means that you have to trust something other than yourself. So, whatever you want to call it. But for me, trusting God to take care of those details in a way that work better than the way I thought I could. Sometimes our ego can get so grandiose that it thinks it knows better than the universe, or it thinks it knows better than God himself. It's like, oh, so when you think of it that way, for me, the humbling thing is, wait, do I actually really believe I know I'm like omnipotent here in my knowing? Because I know that's not true.
Well, there's absolute no way we can see the bigger picture.
No, we are not able to do that. So relying on something other than ourselves, a higher power, another realm, whatever is your other, oh my goodness, you've got to know what you're surrendering to and trust it. So build that relationship, build that one. And then the last one that I think is really, really important when you let go is you have to stay unattached to the outcome. Sometimes we surrender when it's as a control mechanism, but expect it to still turn out the way you wanted it to or look the way you want it to. That's not going to work, because that's like taking your power, your control back. So stay unattached to the outcome and quit looking at what you wanted and start looking for the miracle or the blessing in whatever it is that you actually got from
And
that
it is
experience.
so freeing. Like once you start doing that, and I don't want to say not caring. It's kind of almost like you don't care about the situation anymore. But when you're not attaching yourself
Right.
to this one thing, it's like, oh, who cares?
Yeah.
Why did I care so
Yeah.
much about that?
Yeah. It is very carefree in that
Yeah,
space.
carefree.
It's okay. There's room for other people to have what they want. I don't have to have what I want. It's a freedom that comes with surrender. There's so many gifts on the other side of it. There's peace, there's tranquility, there's freedom, there's a sense of space. I love that word that you use in association with it, Kristen, because it's like this wide open space where you get to be.
You get to be expansive.
Yes, it's expansive, where that control and being right is constrictive. It's very tight.
It's almost like you're taking these heavy burdens off your shoulder and putting them to the side.
And it's, what is it that we're saying? Ultimately, at the end of that, we're saying, I can be okay no matter what.
Yes, that's the root of it.
I can be okay if this doesn't happen the way I want it to. I can still feel joy and peace if everything isn't perfect or everything doesn't go the way it's supposed to. But you do have to consciously let go. You have to take that burden off your shoulder. You have to take that resistance and set it down and go, I don't have to fight this battle. I can be okay. And I'm not saying there's not battles that you don't encounter that you have to take on for your own good, for your own well-being. If someone is overstepping, if someone's boundaryless and they're taking advantage of you, surrendering to that doesn't mean, okay, I'm just going to let them keep doing it because I don't want to fight a battle, because that's not right. So I'm just going to let them keep doing that to me. That's not a surrender. That's the way we're talking. The surrender is to say, I'm going to set a boundary and I'm going to let go of whether they like me or not. I'm going to say, here's what needs to happen for my well-being. And I'm not attached to whether you are going to be my friend anymore or whether you have a judgment about me or not. It's letting go of your attachment to approval or to whatever outcome. If you're playing the game, then stop and say, what is this teaching me? And when you get the lesson, it's easy to set the boundary and let go. It's much easier if you know the why. But this gets real complicated. So I want to encourage our listeners to really start being mindful about how, when, where do you surrender? How, when, and where do you not surrender? And how does that work for you? In what ways are you not surrendering and it's causing you to suffer? And the way you find that is, where am I resistant? Who am I resistant to? What lesson in life am I resistant to? And when you become, again, you always know we come back to the very first step in my coaching model is that of awareness. Be aware of what you do. Ask yourself why you do it. Ask yourself, what are you afraid of if you do it differently? Really glean out of that awareness about who am I? Who's operating? And sometimes it feels like you're studying someone that's not even you. When you stop to observe yourself and you're like, why do I do that? Why do I let that person bully me? Why do I get intimidated? Why am I so scared to stand up and talk in front of a group of 50 people? Like, stop and ask yourself, what is it that you are carrying that you're resistant to? Perhaps it's your own power. Perhaps it's stepping into the fullness of who you are. Why would we resist that? The ego is going to tell you, well, remember last time you did that in 7th grade and people laughed, or you got embarrassed, or you were humiliated? Like, we're not going to have that experience again. And you have to say, thank you for sharing, but I'm going to try it again because I think this time I could do it. And it's empowering. It's taking your power back from that protective ego and doing it a new way through surrender. It's a fascinating study. I'm my own most interesting person in my life. It's me. I do the dumbest things, the craziest things, the most nonsensical things, and having no idea why until I stop and watch myself. And then I'll think, why do I do it that way? Why did I care so much? Why was I letting that upset me? Why did I give my power away? And that's what we're talking about here. Okay, I think on another episode, I'm going to share another story of surrender, but it's got so many other lessons to it. But we're out of time today. So
I just keep thinking, Jenny, I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
That you're surrendering to the power of love instead of acting in the action of battle.
Yes.
Like,
that's beautiful, Kristen.
Because I don't want people to feel like, because this is what I was thinking when you think of surrender, that people can walk all over you. You're surrendering to the power of your love in your inner world and what can make you feel good no matter what's happening out there.
Yes.
Does that make sense? I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but I feel like I'm supposed to be saying it.
Yes, it's beautiful. As a matter of fact, I think we'll do something with that part right there in the blessing room today, because it is that. It is a shift. A surrender is shifting from the human control mechanism, even a human survival mechanism, into the energy of love and faith.
Because when you do that, I've realized when you don't do your normal pattern of how you would act in that situation and you come from love, the other person acts differently.
Right. Right. They have to, because you're meeting them with a brand new energy, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, yes, letting go, surrendering sometimes to something that feels so unfair or scary or disappointing or frustrating or confusing in order to surrender to the power of love. It's a life-changing experience. And so we are going to continue that discussion in the blessing room over on Patreon. You can join us. It's $5 a month. So if this is something that you feel you want to hear more about or you want to explore more, you can join this month and then drop your membership. It's real easy to let it go. And while you're there, you can visit some of our other gifts that we have in there, meditations. You can get all kinds of good stuff over there. We are trying to bring an ad-free podcast to you, and your support helps us do that. Your support on Patreon or any other way that you can support us, simply by sharing our podcast with others and rating it on the platform where you listen to podcasts, all of that, giving us a review, all of that helps us so much. And we want to thank all of you for listening to our little podcast here. Our next 2 episodes are going to dive into some deep topics. We're going back into the deep water again. We're going to be actually talking about trauma and what it can do so quietly to our nervous system over time. And we're going to also have a guest speaker who will be sharing a really specific treatment for releasing trauma. And it's so gentle and so profound that I can't wait for you to learn more about it. It's been an incredibly powerful tool and resource for both Kristen and for me. So you don't want to miss our next couple of episodes. Make sure you follow us and stay tuned. Until then, enjoy living life one day at a time and always with love.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you found a spark of wisdom to carry with you, and maybe even a deeper invitation to heal and grow and transform through your own beautiful story. Or maybe this episode made you think of someone who could use encouragement. And if so, I hope you will share it with them. If you'd like to learn more about working with me or attending one of my healing retreats, coaching programs, and other offerings, you can visit my website at jennyaiello.com or email me directly at jenny@jaiello.com. You'll find all the links in the show notes. If today's episode touched you, it would mean the world if you would leave a review or share it with someone who might need it, or just reach out and let me know how it landed for you. I'd love to hear from you. I'm building something special here. Real stories, real life, real connection. One episode, one heart, and one story at a time. As always, with love. Oh, and this is the legal message, but mostly a message from my heart, and I just need to share this with you right now. Please know this podcast is offered solely for educational and entertainment purposes. If you find yourself triggered due to anything that was shared in this podcast, please seek professional help. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for mental health services. While I am a professional life coach, I am not a psychotherapist, nor am I a mental health clinician. So if you are struggling emotionally, please seek help, because you matter, you are important, and most of all, you are worthy of doing this work, the work that leads you to a better and healthier place. Okay? All right. Thank you. And please always make enough time to take care of yourself, and do so with love.